Now, if you can hear the violence behind me, they're rather appropriate given the day's events. Angela Merkel has been re-elected for a fourth term, but it's a hollow victory given the pummelling that she and her former coalition partners received and the success of the far-right nationalist Alternative for Germany party. The AfD, which promised to fight an invasion of foreigners, seems to have capitalised on a backlash over Mrs Merkel's decision to open Germany's borders to over 1 million migrants and refugees in 2015. The results gave Mrs Merkel's CDU-CSU alliance 33% of the vote, its worst showing since 1945. The Social Democrats have just over 20%, the Free Democrats 10%, the Left Party 9% and the Greens 8.9%. The shock result was the AfD, which became the third largest party as it polled 12.6%, and that gives them over 90 parliamentary seats. That means the far right has become part of the German political landscape for the first time since the Second World War. It all leaves a tense political backdrop and Mrs Merkel with a headache as she tries to cobble together a new ruling coalition. It wasn't supposed to look like this. Yes, she has won, but what a bitter victory. Her party lost 8% of the vote. Angela Merkel strode into her party headquarters this morning after a night of licking wounds, wringing hands and extracting daggers from her back. What coalition will now run Europe's most powerful nation is far from obvious. Germany could be facing months of instability. Frau Merkel, Sie wurden vor der Wahl und nach Brexit und Trump.
So where does that leave her, I asked the Chancellor, until recently seen as a pillar of stability, especially after Trump and Brexit?
A few have called me this. They need to decide what to call me now.
I try again. Still a force for stability?
As I've said, I use all my strengths to serve Germany and a stable Europe, and then let others decide how they want to describe me, which, by the way, varies quite a bit in Europe.
Indeed.
Die AfD 13.
Supporters of the hard right-wing AfD, or Alternative for Germany party. This was their stampede into the history books. From 0 seats to 94 in the Bundestag. Their motto sounds familiar. We want to take our country back. Outside, the response. Berlin hates the AfD. Nazis out. You make us sick. You get the drift. Inside, they soldiered on with the national anthem. Wind in their chest, beer on their breath.
We are no Nazis. We have nothing to do with Nazi ideology.
So why did their most senior leader recently say this? Germany should no longer be embarrassed about its history, and Germans should be proud of the achievements of the Wehrmacht in 2 world wars. Alexander Gauland, his co-leader Alice Weidel and their supporters are voicing opinions that dared not speak their name, especially on immigration, until now. A lover of tweed and most things British, we spoke to him today.
I think a lot of people in Germany haven't accepted what Chancellor Merkel has done in the last 2 years, and they see this invasion of strange people with strange values from strange continents as a threat to their art of living, to their traditions, to their social welfare and way of life. And a lot of people see that the media and the elites of Germany don't really look at their problems, that they have been forgotten.
I've seen many of your posters on the election campaign, and frankly, they are just offensive. I mean, the one about with the pregnant woman saying we can make our own babies, implication we don't need outsiders, we don't need foreigners, we don't like burqas, we want bikinis. I mean, this is dog whistle politics of the worst kind, isn't it?
I don't think so. No. We don't prefer burqas, we prefer bikinis, but this has nothing to do with racist policies.
But you're whipping up fear and hatred against a large portion of the population that has absolutely nothing to do with terrorism and extremism and Sharia law.
The fears in the country. The fears in the country, and we have a lot of terrorism in the country. You have a lot of terrorism in your country.
But I haven't seen a single burqa on the streets of Berlin, not one. So, I mean, I'm sure they exist, but it's not a big problem,
When and where did you go?
Everywhere. It's not a big problem.
No, it is still not a big problem. You are right, but it is a problem. And I have met a lot of people who say, well, we don't, we are afraid of going in the evening to our neighbors. And we are afraid going in a restaurant and going back with our taxi in our flats.
What do you say to those people? To those Germans, and there are many of them, who look at you and look at your party and say, you are racist. What do you say to them?
We are no racists, we are no national socialists, we are a democratic party.
And a very messy one. The AfD's day of triumph had one big hitch. The party's chairwoman, Frauke Petri, dropped a bombshell in their victory press conference by walking out, saying the party wasn't fit to govern. Bang goes German complacency. Germany too has caught a bout of populist contagion. It too has joined the tortured debate of our time about national identity.
Red Army artillery was hitting, and then, well...
Outside the Reichstag, the tour guides of German democracy will need to tweak their scripts.
Well, I'm joined now by Ulrike Giraud, who's the founder of the European Democracy Lab. Ulrike, how alarmed are you by this result?
I'm pretty alarmed because this is really a novelty for Germany, and it's a systemic sort of change because we have these AfD people now in the Bundestag and they will probably stay.
So Germany thought at one stage it was immune to the kind of forces behind Brexit, behind Trump. That's not the case.
Well, we haven't been immune. I mean, you cannot be immune if sort of half of Europe gets populist parties. I think there is also a snowball effect with Trump, with Brexit, with Poland, with Hungary. So that is the one thing. But the other is that the refugee crisis actually was, I think, the trigger for what we have now in terms of resentment in the German population.
Yet even today, I saw Angela Merkel. She doesn't resent that. She doesn't regret that.
No, and we shouldn't regret it because it was a good decision to take these. But it's if you would go down in detailed questions, why did people vote for the AfD? Most of them tell it's about the cultural shock. It's about this country is too quickly changing. It's about adaptation capacity and all of that. So I think we need to acknowledge that for some people it came as a shock, and it's regrettable in a way because we are a rich and wealthy country. We should have done it.
And among men in Eastern Germany, the AfD is now the most popular party.
There's a clear divide in the voting between East and West, and this points to former GDR sort of is a very different voting behavior, much more volatile, much more AfD than in the West. And what we see now for the first time is 6 parties in the government, which points to a very instability in terms of governmental sort of coalition schemes. And so all this is new. And yes, I mean, there's a clear East-West divide in Germany.
Can she cobble together a coalition? It doesn't look very optimistic today.
She can probably cobble together a coalition and perhaps moderate it, but the problem is what that coalition can do in terms of policy. Yeah, I mean, there's a question to have a government and a government that can do actually policies and important policies. So in terms of important policies, let's talk about Europe. I don't actually think that the Greens and the Liberals have positions to share. So
they're poles apart, aren't they?
They pull apart because the Liberals are basically against what Macron is supposed to present tomorrow in terms of Euro governance, rebuilding Europe. And so the Liberals are more against, the Greens are in favour. So what should that be as a coalition?
So in terms of Project Europe, I mean, Macron's giving a big speech on Tuesday, tomorrow, where he hopes to reboot the Franco-German engine behind a closer European Union. How's that going to go?
Well, I'm pretty much concerned about this because Germany was the island of stability. Franco-German relations are the essence of Europe. If the Franco-German engine fails, then Europe has not much future. And so I'm very concerned about Merkel's capacity to being able to respond to what Macron rightly will suggest tomorrow.
How does this change things for Brexit?
Well, Brexit is another real big thing because there's no solution to Brexit now, as we know. And then Brexit will hit in years and a half time Europe. And with Europe being unprepared and the UK being unprepared, that can only be a further hit. And I think this coalition, if there is a sort of unstable Jamaica coalition, will not have a clear vision on how to deal with Brexit.
So it makes it more complicated still.
It makes it even more complicated. So there is no answer for Brexit, neither on the British side nor on the European side. So unfortunately, I think that the last day has shown that Europe is pretty much in a mess with not so much sort of thing at the horizon how to change this.
Well, Vicky Giraud, thank you very much indeed. Well, you heard it there. Everything to play for, everything rather messy. One really has a sense here in Berlin that the political ground is shifting under one's feet, even though Angela Merkel has been re-elected for a fourth term.